Imagine you send a text to a friend that simply says, "I'm fine." It's just 2 words. You hit send. The screen swooshes, and a second later, it pops up on their phone. Does the person receiving it actually read the exact same "I'm fine" that you meant to send?
I mean, we generally assume they do, right?
Right. But according to the framework we are diving into today, the answer is a definitive, resounding no, because we've all been tricked into thinking communication is just a postal system.
Oh, totally.
You package up a thought, put a digital stamp on it, drop it in the mail, and just expect it to arrive perfectly intact.
And that postal metaphor is, it's incredibly comforting. We love the idea of secure delivery.
Yeah.
We really want to believe that moving an idea from point A to point B is just a logistics problem, like plumbing.
Yeah.
If the pipes are clean, the water arrives completely unchanged.
But the material we're exploring today completely dismantles that illusion, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. We're looking at a really paradigm-shifting concept from a text called How a Message Messes Age, the living body of transmission.
Right.
And its core argument is that messages aren't objects you can just, put in a box. They are living biological organisms.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because treating a message like a living organism sounds poetic, but this text means it literally.
Yes, very literally.
A text message, a rumor, an ancient piece of advice, these aren't static files. They are born, they metabolize, they mutate, and they age.
Exactly.
The gap between you hitting send and someone else receiving it isn't just empty space or a fiber optic cable. That gap is where the message actually comes to life.
To really grasp how radical this is, we have to look at what happens when things go wrong.
Okay.
Think about traditional communication models, like what engineers use to design phone networks or the internet. In that world, any change to a message during its journey is called noise.
Right, and noise is the enemy.
Complete enemy. A dropped syllable, static on the line, a misunderstood word. The entire goal of modern technology is to ruthlessly eliminate noise so the original signal remains pure and untouched.
I mean, if my text message arrives garbled because of a bad cell tower, I consider that a failure of technology. I didn't get my point across.
From an engineering standpoint, sure. But the text proposes we flip that entirely on its head. What if the distortion isn't a failure?
Wait, what do you mean?
What if the distortion actually is the message?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. When a piece of information moves through people, say a family story passed down through generations, it doesn't just travel across time, it accumulates.
Okay.
By the time a story passes through 10 different mouths, that 10th version isn't a failed, noisy, degraded copy of the first one. It is a perfect record of 10 unique human encounters. The author uses this brilliant phrase, the noise is autobiography.
Is this basically like playing a massive, multi-generational game of telephone?
What's fascinating here is that that is the perfect analogy.
Because we always treat the end of a telephone game as this hilarious failure of communication. The original phrase in the circle was, "I like purple elephants," and by the time it gets around the room, the final person yells, "My bike has a flat tire."
Right, and everyone laughs because the message is ruined.
Yeah. But according to this framework, that final silly phrase is actually an incredibly rich map. It's a living record of every single person who played. Their slight mishearings, their specific accents, their baseline assumptions about what words should logically follow other words.
That reframing of corruption as accumulation changes everything.
It really is.
We are deeply conditioned, especially in Western cultures, to view aging, whether we're talking about a human body or an ancient text, as a process of diminishment.
Things get older, they decay, they lose their original vitality.
Exactly. But look at traditional ways of understanding the world. In many indigenous African and Asian perspectives, aging is understood entirely differently.
How so?
It is accumulation. An elder in those communities isn't viewed as a diminished youth. They are a youth plus a lifetime of experience. They have gathered time and metabolized it into wisdom.
So an oral tradition that has been passed down for 500 years isn't a corrupted, dusty version of the original.
No, not at all.
It is the original plus its entire 500-year journey.
The journey is the point. Attempting to strip away all those layers of human contact to find some pristine, imaginary first draft like an original version before anyone touched it is an act of violence against the transmission itself.
Oh, that's heavy.
It denies the reality of the people who carried it. Which brings us to a really beautiful concept in the text called the paradox of preservation.
Oh, the butterfly metaphor. I was really hoping we'd get to this.
It's a great one.
The text argues that when we try to freeze a message to protect it, like when an institution canonizes a sacred text, or we lock a historical document in a climate-controlled archive, we are basically pinning a butterfly to a corkboard.
Exactly.
It might look exactly like a butterfly, but it absolutely isn't one anymore. It is just evidence that a butterfly used to exist.
But trying to save the message from aging, we accidentally arrest its life.
Yeah.
The great wisdom traditions of the world originally lived in breath, in voice, in the physical bodies of the people speaking them. They were fluid.
And then they got pinned to the board.
Right. When they were institutionalized and fixed into unchangeable canon,
Yeah.
they suffered this exact paradox. They became reports of a living transmission rather than the transmission itself.
This makes me think of something way more mundane than sacred texts, actually. Group chat.
Oh, group chats, yeah.
Have you ever had a hilarious, fast-paced inside joke flowing in a group chat and someone takes a screenshot of it and posts it publicly on social media?
And it just completely dies.
It completely dies. It's not funny anymore. By freezing it and pulling it out of the living, breathing context of those specific friends at that specific second, you've pinned the butterfly.
That is a perfect modern equivalent. To read that screenshot or to read a preserved archival text, you have to do what the author calls hearing through the amber.
Hearing through the amber.
Yeah, you have to mentally warm up that frozen, fixed text with your own attention to bring it briefly back to life. It requires a completely different kind of loyalty. We usually think of accuracy as freezing time. This text argues for fidelity to the living relay. True accuracy means honoring the fact that a message is supposed to move, adapt, and change shape depending on who is holding it.
Okay, so if a message acts like a snowball rolling downhill, gathering the autobiography of everyone who touches it, wouldn't the message just become pure, unadulterated chaos?
You would think so.
If everyone adds their own noise, how does anything coherent actually survive the journey?
Well, our biology acts as a ruthless editor. Messages do not age at the same rate, and they don't hold on to everything equally.
Okay.
What determines survival, what dictates which parts of the snowball stick and which parts melt away, is emotional velocity.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The text points out that when someone shares a complex piece of information with you, your nervous system does not behave like a computer hard drive.
Not even close.
It doesn't just passively record the data, it only holds on to the parts it finds emotionally charged. All the intellectual scaffolding, the subtle nuance, the carefully constructed conditional clauses, your brain just drops them.
Think about the sheer processing power it takes to analyze and store nuance. From an evolutionary perspective, nuance is metabolic dead weight.
That makes a lot of sense.
Our brains evolved to prioritize high arousal emotional states, danger, joy, outrage, fear, because those are the signals that keep us alive.
Right.
When a message hits your nervous system, the complex intellectual structure is stripped away to reduce cognitive load. The emotional peak isn't just preserved, it is actively amplified.
This completely explains the anatomy of a rumor.
Oh, absolutely.
People always wonder why a rumor is always 10 times more extreme than the actual event that sparked it. It's because every time the rumor is passed to a new person, their nervous system filters out the boring, nuanced context and only passes along the juiciest, most shocking core.
The core emotional signal travels the fastest. As the text notes, the message arrives hotter than it departed.
It's so relatable when you apply it to your own life. Think about a massive, blowout argument you've had with a partner or a close friend.
Oh boy.
A year later, do you remember the brilliant, nuanced, incredibly logical points you both made?
Absolutely not.
No. All of that logic evaporated. But the hot emotional peak, how deeply furious you felt, the exact pitch of their voice when they slammed the door, the feeling in your chest that is perfectly preserved in your memory. The nuance died, but the emotion thrived.
If we connect this to the bigger picture,
Yeah.
the metabolism of time favors feeling over fact.
Yeah.
The human nervous system literally forces a message to simplify to its most potent emotional core, just so it can survive the physical relay from one body to the next.
But surely we've invented ways to bypass our messy nervous systems. The source material talks about cold transmission,
Right.
stuff that is explicitly designed to have zero emotion. I'm thinking of mathematical proofs, rigid legal contracts, or like incredibly strict architectural blueprints.
Cold transmission is our attempt to build armor around a message. A legal document uses highly specific, incredibly dry, repetitive language precisely to suppress your individual emotional noise.
So my personal feelings can't get in the way.
Exactly. It is designed so that your personal feelings about the contract cannot legally change its meaning. But the crucial insight here is that even cold transmission cannot escape biology. Time metabolizes everything.
Because a contract doesn't exist in a vacuum. The world around it keeps spinning.
Look at the U.S. Constitution or any centuries-old legal framework. The words remain fixed, but the cultural context that made those words legible slowly dissolves.
Oh,
Or
true.
consider mathematics. The foundational axioms of physics that seemed completely rigid and absolute under Isaac Newton were fundamentally warped and reinterpreted by later generations discovering quantum mechanics.
So the armor doesn't last forever.
You can build the thickest armor imaginable around a piece of data, but as the author states, nothing escapes the metabolism of time.
So our nervous systems warp hot messages through emotion, and the slow march of time eventually warps even the coldest, most rigid data. But the source material takes this a massive step further, and this is where it gets a little confrontational. It argues that as a listener, you aren't just warping the message, you are actually producing it.
This is perhaps the most uncomfortable implication of the entire text. Every single act of receiving is an act of authorship.
So what does this all mean for you, the person listening right now? Are you literally co-authoring this deep dive in your head based on whether you had a good breakfast or if you're stuck in awful traffic?
Actually, yes.
Because the text insists receiving is never passive. You don't just open a container and extract the meaning we put in there.
Your personal history, your physical body, your current stress levels, they actively manufacture the meaning of the words you are hearing.
So the message I get is,
The message you receive is always fundamentally a message about you. It is a reflection of your tolerances, your current frequencies, your blind spots, and your open wounds. Think about a piece of art or a polarizing speech.
okay,
The exact same set of words can land as a devastating condemnation for one person and as absolute euphoric liberation for another. The message itself didn't change its molecular structure.
right, the words are the words.
The receivers are simply different instruments, tuned to completely different scales.
I love that idea of the receiver as a musical instrument, but let me push back on this because it sounds a bit dangerous.
How so?
If I am co-authoring every message I hear, doesn't that mean objective reality goes out the window? Can I just decide you meant whatever I want you to mean? That sounds like pure relativism, where no one can ever be held accountable for what they say.
That is the natural fear when we abandon the postal system metaphor. But the text provides a crucial safeguard here.
Okay, good.
It is not saying all interpretations are equally valid, or that communication is just a free-for-all hallucination. Because we are instruments, we have to acknowledge that some instruments are better calibrated than others.
I see.
The art of genuinely listening with your whole history, with empathy, with focus, is a rigorous discipline. An out-of-tune guitar is going to mangle a beautiful chord.
That makes total sense.
A well-calibrated instrument, a disciplined listener, yields a much more accurate reception than someone who is just casually hearing noise. The truth isn't that meaning is fake. The truth is that no receiver is totally neutral, and no act of receiving leaves the message untouched.
And this idea of the receiver being an instrument leads into my absolute favorite, most counterintuitive concept in the whole source, the function of forgetting.
Yes.
Wait, how can forgetting possibly be a feature of communication? We normally treat forgetting as a total system failure. Like, oh no, I lost the data, my brain glitched.
The author calls this composting.
Yeah.
And to understand it, we have to look at esoteric and contemplative wisdom traditions.
Wow.
In many of these lineages, deep teachings are deliberately withheld from novice students. Not to be manipulative and not to hoard power, but because of biological reality.
What do you mean?
Pouring a heavy, complex truth into a person before their instrument is calibrated to receive it means the truth just passes right through them. It finds no purchase.
So the timing of the disclosure is actually a physical part of the transmission. If you hand someone a heavy weight before they have the muscles to lift it, it's just wasted.
Exactly.
But the text also talks about the forgetting that happens inside the receiver.
Have you ever read a book when you were 20 and you found it incredibly boring or pointless, but you pick it up again at 40 during a massive life crisis, and suddenly every single page feels like it was written specifically to explain your entire life?
Yes. Or when a mentor gives you a piece of advice and you totally ignore it because it sounds like cliche nonsense. Then 5 years later, you're going through a terrible breakup or a career failure, and that exact phrase just pops into your head, totally unbidden, and it is suddenly the exact medicine you need.
According to this framework, the message wasn't absent during those 5 years. You didn't lose the data.
Where was it?
The message was composting. It was moving through the slow, dark fermentation of your body's internal clock. It was waiting until your instrument had aged enough and gathered enough scar tissue and experience to actually metabolize it.
That is
The
why
message had been traveling inside you all along, waiting for the conditions of its own receivability to ripen.
what looks like delay is often gestation. That completely changes how I view my own memory. So, if timing is this critical and receiving is this deeply personal, chaotic act of co-authorship, what actually happens when it works?
When there's a real connection.
Yeah, in those rare magical moments when a sender and a receiver align perfectly, what is the ultimate purpose of this living relay?
Beneath all the technical layers, underneath the noise and the cognitive load, transmission is ultimately an act of radical intimacy. It is a wager.
A wager.
You are betting that something entirely internal to you, a feeling, a terrifying thought, a spark of inspiration, can somehow be pushed out into the physical world, and that someone else can internalize it, and that a genuine bridge will form across the void between two human minds.
And when that bridge holds, the text says it doesn't arrive as just data. It arrives as presence.
Yes.
You feel contact. It's this momentary collapse between self and other. You don't just understand the information on a spreadsheet level. You literally feel the specific history, the weight, and the aging of the person who sent it to you. The author says it folds time.
Which brings a massive amount of ethical weight to the act of listening.
Definitely.
If you are deeply touched by a transmission, if you feel that presence fold time and hit your nervous system, the message does not start with you. You are now part of a chain. You become a steward.
Right, the ethics of relay. I receive it, I compost it in my own biology, and eventually I have to pass it on. But the text is clear that good stewardship isn't about being a perfect photocopier. It's about how you hold it. You can't hold it too tightly because then you pin the butterfly and kill its movement.
And you can't hold it too loosely or you drop its essence entirely.
Oh, it's a balancing act.
The great transmitters of knowledge, whether we're talking about musicians passing down a blues riff, indigenous elders sharing ecological knowledge, or a parent passing a philosophy to a child, they don't act as passive hard drives.
Right.
They take the message in, they let it live and breathe inside their own experience, and when they hand it off, they appropriately add their own autobiography to it.
And that addition isn't a corruption.
No, that addition isn't a corruption of the original. It is the message being treated to a capable new age.
Okay, I track with all of that, but I have to push back a little on the final piece of the puzzle here.
Go for it.
The text talks about how the act of sending a message fundamentally changes the sender.
It does.
It says that to take a pure pre-verbal feeling in your gut and translate it into words, you have to construct it. You lose a piece of the raw feeling, but you gain a shared space. And it calls this translation process a small death of the self that had been holding it.
The sender is aged by the vulnerability of sending.
Right, but honestly, that almost sounds inherently self-serving.
Self-serving.
Yeah, if I am forcing a small death of my old self just so I can grow and evolve, doesn't that make the listener just a prop for my own transformation? Like, I'm just using whoever will listen to me for my own personal therapy session so I can feel better.
This raises an important question about the nature of exchange. It is very easy to view communication as transactional. I give you this, you give me that. If we are still trapped in that postal system mindset.
Okay, that's fair.
But remember, the text frames this entirely around intimacy. The author views this translation process not as selfishness, but as a profound, costly gift.
A gift.
Yes, you change by sending it. You lose the absolute purity of keeping a secret to yourself. But what was once isolated entirely inside the dark room of your own mind becomes, through the agonizing effort to articulate it, a physical space in the real world.
Oh, I see.
You built a room out of your internal experience, and now another person can walk in and inhabit that room with you. It is the brief, recurring miracle of being known.
A shared space. I really like that framing. It's not just me dumping my heavy emotional baggage on you so I don't have to carry it. It's me spending the energy to build a bridge so we can stand somewhere together, even if the bridge isn't perfect.
The transformation of the sender is just as vital to the living ecosystem of communication as the slow composting of the receiver. Both sides are permanently altered by the event.
And this beautiful idea of shared space brings us to our final takeaway for you, the listener, as you step back out into a world that is just constantly, relentlessly screaming messages at you from every screen and billboard.
We've covered a lot of philosophical ground today, but the core paradigm shift is incredibly practical. Communication is not plumbing.
Definitely not.
It is a living biological chain of intimacy, emotion, and stewardship. A message is an event. Distortion is just a map of the human journey. And your nervous system is actively, physically co-authoring every single piece of information you take in.
Including this exact deep dive. By getting us your attention today, you haven't just downloaded an audio file into your brain.
No, you haven't.
You have absorbed this framework, your biology is already starting to compost it, and you are now the absolute newest link in its living relay. The package isn't sitting safely in a mailbox. It is mutating inside you right now.
And it will continue to age, to gather your specific autobiography, and accumulate new meaning as you carry it forward into your own conversations.
Which leaves us with one final provocative thought to mull over. If we take this text seriously, if every message truly carries the conditions of its own receivability, and if the message you hear is really a reflection of your own internal capacity to receive it, what does the best piece of advice you've ever completely ignored say about who you were at that exact moment in time?